Good evening, everybody. Welcome into To The Point. Are all doing well on this Tuesday evening? We have a lot to dive into tonight. A lot of interesting stories across the world of sports. Not just football. So many things to touch on that happened today, a little bit last night. So we're going to touch on all of it today. Today on the show, we will talk about the Australian Open, where Novak Djokovic continues his dominance and just continues to run through the tournament. We also have a female semifinal that should be fantastic. That'll be played tomorrow morning, Thursday morning, pardon me. So we'll talk about that. We're going to get to Patrick Waugh going to Long Island, Corey Perry going to the Edmonton Oilers, Tom Fitzgerald re-upping with the Devils. Lots happening. The Bruins win last night that I thought was really impressive, and they've been fantastic over the last little while. We're going to talk about them. Also want to talk some PGA Tour. I want to talk some NFL because there were some hirings. One head coach, some coordinator positions. Sounds like there's a three-man race for the Chargers job. So we're going to react to all of that during today's program. But I have to start off the show talking about the NBA. The NBA that's over halfway through the season. Celtics have been a great story. Best team in basketball. Denver Nuggets looking to repeat. They're a half game out of first place in the West. You have Joel Embiid scoring 70 points last night. You had Karl Anthony Towns scoring 62 in a loss. Timberwolves have been a great story. Oklahoma City's been a great story. The Raptors are a complete tire fire. But the team in question here is the Milwaukee Bucks. Milwaukee, who fired their head coach last May, Budenholzer, after losing in the first round to the 8th-seeded Miami Heat. They had options. Talked to different people. I thought the Bucks should hire Nick Nurse. I thought he was the perfect fit. A team trying to win, they go scoop him up. They did not. Nick Nurse went to the 76ers. They're having an impressive season, right alongside Milwaukee. And Milwaukee hired Adrian Griffin, the former assistant coach on Nick Nurse's staff. Well, through 43 games, the Milwaukee Bucks have the second best record in the Eastern Conference. They are 30-13. They're 3.5 games out of first place in the East. They traded for Damian Lillard. He comes in with Giannis Antetokounmpo, who had a triple-double last night. Chris Middleton back, Brook Lopez, Beasley. They have a veteran team, and they have one goal, and that's win a championship this season. But as of late, the Bucks have not been impressive. This is their last stretch of games. Give up 132 to the Jazz, 135 to the Celtics, 118 to the Warriors, 142 to Sacramento, 135 to the Cavs, 135 in a win against the Pistons, and they give up 113 last night in a win against the Pistons. 2 games back-to-back against the Detroit Pistons, the worst team in the NBA, 4 wins, and yet they were nail-biting victories. It took everything. Giannis had to play big minutes in every game to win those games. You don't want that. 35 minutes this time of year against that team. Damian Lillard played 37. Damian Lillard's been okay since coming over. They're still trying to figure that out. I still think they need more depth. They need better bench help. I don't believe the Bucks can beat the Celtics in a playoff series right now. I'm not even certain they can beat the Philadelphia 76ers, quite frankly, who have their problems, but Embiid's playing like one of the best players in the world. which he is. They got good additions from the Harden deal, and they just play good basketball. Tobias Harris is fine. Maxi's a stud. Oubre. They have guys that can ball. So after 2 close wins against a 4-win team, the Milwaukee Bucks decided to fire Adrian Griffin today. Less than 1 year into his tenure. He coached for like 6 months. That's it. And he's done. Lots of reports on this. You think maybe there's a story. He did something wrong. But Chris Mannix, who's a great reporter, had this to say. There have been steady rumblings for weeks in NBA circles that several Bucks veterans, including Giannis, had lost faith in Griffin. What appeared to be a smart hire last spring just never worked out. And then Bobby Marks, not surprised by the Adrian Griffin firing even with Milwaukee at 30-13. The defense has taken a major step back and this team has second-round exit written all over it. Rip the Band-Aid off now with 39 games remaining and not in the offseason. This is a championship or bust season. It absolutely is. Yes, they re-signed Giannis Antetokounmpo in the offseason. Yes, they traded for Damian Lillard, but that does not mean that those two players or Giannis will want out of Milwaukee if he doesn't believe he can win. Milwaukee's a small market, and unfortunately in small markets in sports, you have an inferiority complex, and you're going to acquiesce to your superstars because you're afraid of losing them. Adrian Griffin, clearly they believe wasn't a good enough coach to get them over the hump, or wasn't a good enough coach to help this talented team win a championship this season. And they're going to have an interim coach for the time being, but it sounds like they're going to be talking to several candidates, veteran coaches, over the next little while. Adrian Wojnarowski of the Mothership. ESPN sources, Doc Rivers is a top Milwaukee target to replace Adrian Griffin, but the sides have yet to talk. Bucks are expected to reach out and gauge his interest soon. They're supposed to talk to several veteran head coaches, bring him in before the All-Star break, have some time, have almost half a season to put a team together and figure this out. Couple things. It's hard for GMs, management types to admit they made a mistake. And by firing Adrian Griffin in the month of January after hiring him in the month of May, you are admitting that you made a mistake. You are telling everybody we did not hire somebody who's a head coach in the National Basketball Association. He cannot help us win a championship. He was not the right choice. And that's a tough pill to swallow for GM's presidents to look around and go, oh shit, we're supposed to win this year and I don't have faith in the team that we're going to. If we don't win, if Tatum or the Miami Heat, who are less talented, somehow get back to another conference final and we're not there, how are we going to sell this to Giannis, to the market? Yes, Milwaukee won one championship a few years ago. It was a great moment. You beat the Phoenix Suns. Giannis is put on a mountain. But you've won one championship. You haven't gotten back to the NBA Finals. You haven't gotten back to the conference finals since winning that championship. Chris Middleton's an aging player. You trade for an older player in Damian Lillard. Brook Lopez is over 35 playing center in the NBA. This is an old team that still has talent that hope that they can do it one more time. I don't view the Bucks as a team that's going to be great for the next couple of years because I just don't know if their bodies can sustain, if they can play enough quality basketball. Where you have Boston, who's much younger. Same goes for Philly. The New York Knicks get better every season. The Pacers just traded for Pascal Siakam. They're trying to get better. The Heat are constantly involved. The Orlando Magic, who've been struggling as of late, have young pieces. I think Paolo Banchero is a great basketball player. You got to make some decisions. And just the talent around you might be too good for you to stay in the fight. Doc Rivers won a championship. It was a long time ago, but he won a championship. I don't think it's a stupid hire. It's desperate, yes, but the firing was a desperation move. So hiring a Doc Rivers who's been calling games for the mothership pretty well, I might add, would not, be over the top. It'd be a calculated decision. They believe Doc Rivers is a coach that can go win them a title this year. Which if he can do it, all the power to him. But the Bucks are an interesting team because they're 30-13. If the Detroit Pistons, who have 4 wins, fire a coach, you look around and go, okay, that makes sense, regardless of how much money their head coach makes. Here's another from The Athletic. Damian Lillard reportedly had a hard time adjusting to Milwaukee's offensive scheme. Along the way, league sources say Lillard has spent much of this season struggling with the way the Bucks function on the offensive end. While he remained patient with coaches and teammates, there was inevitable pressure on Griffin from the organization to make the most out of Lillard's talent in the kind of way that validates the choice to part ways with Drew Holiday, Grayson Allen, who's been really good, and 3 first-round picks in order to land him. Can't disagree with that. It's a predicament. And I think Giannis wanted Budenholzer gone after he lost in the first round last year, and I think Giannis likely wanted Adrian Griffin gone here. I think he gets what he wants in Milwaukee. If he wants Doc Rivers as his head coach, they will probably hire Doc Rivers or another veteran, that's not employed right now. But the trade deadline's on February 8th, which is in a couple weeks. You're seeing moves. The Raptors have sold off their remaining stars. They've kind of said, we're done. See you, OG. You're going to the Knicks. See you, Pascal. You're going to Indiana. Milwaukee's traded a lot of draft picks. They don't have a whole lot of talent. I think it's going to be hard for this team to drastically improve. They can look at the buyout market, try to scoop up some players, add a couple veterans to their team. But for the most part, their team is going to be their team, and I think coaching is going to have to be the difference, whether the way they play offense or the way they play defense, which has been atrocious lately, to get them to where they want to go. But they're a team that thinks they can win. They're a small market that's put the money into a championship team and clearly look at it and go, I'm not so sure it's going to work. 43 games into being a head coach and you are let go. I can't define it as a panic move because I don't think it is. I think the team looks at the situation and goes, we're not going to win with this guy at head coach. We may not win with this team, but can another coach help us win even with a roster that is not as talented as the Boston Celtics? That you could argue is not as talented as the Philadelphia 76ers. old, we don't defend, we don't have depth. Those are hard obstacles to overcome. Tough break for Adrian Griffin. Might be a tough break for ESPN. If Doc Rivers take this job because it's with one of the best players in the world, well, two of them, and it's with a team that's going to be a playoff team and has a chance to compete. He did it in Philadelphia last year. He'd have to jump on a moving train, but that's life in sports. Milwaukee coming up. They play the Cavaliers at home Wednesday. Home to the Cavs Friday. Home to the Pelicans Saturday. Then they go on the road at the Nuggets, at the Trailblazers, at Mavericks, at Jazz, at Suns. That's a tough stretch. Also got the Timberwolves in there. They play the Nuggets twice in the next couple weeks. Then there's the All-Star break, the second week of February. Be interesting to follow. But Milwaukee clearly believes that they cannot win a championship with this coach. I think they question the roster. And they want to see if somebody else can do the job that Adrian Griffin was not able to do. But rough day for him, who just had never worked out in Milwaukee in his first opportunity to be a head coach in the NBA. But also some guys are just meant to be assistants, and maybe that's just who Adrian Griffin is, and a good assistant on Nick Nurse's staff. Nick Nurse was a head coach. He usurped Dwayne Casey, and it worked out. Adrian Griffin does not get the same fortune in Milwaukee. Other NBA news, the Charlotte Hornets, who beat the Timberwolves last night after Karl-Anthony Towns scored 62 points, traded Terry Rozier to the Miami Heat for a 2027 first-round pick and point guard Kyle Lowry. Kyle Lowry, since leaving the Raptors, has really been a disaster. Signed a 3-year big money deal with the Miami Heat. He's never lived up to it. He missed over half of his first season with personal issues that were never really talked about. They got to the NBA Finals last year with him being really a non-factor. Him just being there but not being a great player. Then this season he's played in 37 games. He had 35 starts, but he's averaging less than 8 points per game. So his numbers continue to go down. Assists go down, shooting percentage. And he had a behemoth of a contract. It's an expiring one. And the Hornets will take it on because they get a first-round pick in the process. Terry Rozier is having a career season. Over 23 points a game with the Charlotte Hornets, who are not a great team. Terry is a significant upgrade on Kyle Lowry. He can shoot. He's a good player. The Heat are an interesting club because this is how they always operate. Currently, they are 6th in the Eastern Conference. Only 5 games above 500 at this point. We look at their team, Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo's been pretty damn good this season. Jimmy Butler, Jaime Jaquez has been fantastic. Duncan Robinson having a career resurgence. Shooting 46% from field goal range, 41% from 3. They got an older team. You look at it, Josh Richardson, Kevin Love, Caleb Martin, Jimmy Butler. No superstars, but just a good nucleus of players. You don't have the most assets in the world, but you're still able to get. They couldn't get Kevin Durant. They couldn't get Damian Lillard, who they wanted. So they go get Terry Rozier. They could have done worse. They needed to get somebody to upgrade their point guard position, which they do. He can score. He's more of a score-first point guard than assist the basketball. But Kyle Lowry was done in Miami. I don't think he's going to play in Charlotte. I see him probably sitting out until they want to buy him out. If they say they're going to try to trade him before the deadline, I don't think that'll happen just with his contract. But the Heat get another scoring threat. He's motivated. He wants a new contract. Heat upcoming. Tomorrow they play the Grizzlies. Thursday, home to the Celtics. Then at the Knicks, play the Suns, the Kings. A tough stretch for them over the next little while. But Terry Rozier is an upgrade. He is a good player. He can shoot. He's having a career season on a really bad team. He's not going to get as many touches, obviously. But he was a good player in the playoffs for the Celtics back in the day. That's what earned him a big contract with Charlotte. He took the money instead of staying in Boston or going to another contender, which you can't blame him. But Miami, they are the zombies. They would scare me at all times because they have the best coach in the world, Eric Spoelstra. They have the mad scientist, Pat Riley. And that team has played together a long time. They know how they work. They know how they tick. Not as talented as their opponents, and yet somehow they keep it interesting. Offensive rebounds, strong three-point shooting, good defense. I think forever the Boston Celtics will be in fear of the Miami Heat. Despite the fact the Heat are up 3-0, Celtics make it 3-3, the Heat still won Game 7 in Boston. They just seem to have their number. Milwaukee lost to the Heat last season. It would not stun me to see the Miami Heat as one of the last 4 teams in the Eastern Conference because that's just what they do. A completely flawed team. But do I trust that the Heat could beat the Knicks in a playoff series? Yes. Even though I think the Knicks are really good. The Knicks who are playing the Nets tonight during rivalry week in the NBA. Brunson's been phenomenal. Julius Randle has turned it around a little bit recently. OG's fit in like a glove since coming over from the Raptors. I like DiVincenzo. Hartenstein gives everything he has. I think they want to do a little bit more. Get another guy off the bench, another player that can provide something. Maybe perhaps Gordon Hayward if he's bought out from the Hornets. There will be options. But I applaud the move by the Heat because it didn't cost them much. You get an upgrade over Kyle Lowry with Terry Rozier. You remain in the fight. And they just have to get in. They'd love to have to not go through the play-in because they had to go through that last year and they nearly didn't make it. And they got all the way to the NBA Finals. But if they could be the 5th, 6th seed in the East, look out. Whether that's Philly with the 3rd seed, or the Bucks, or the Knicks if they could get hot in the second half of the season. The Miami Heat are a scary team. And again, not as talented, but they just find a way. They never should have beaten Milwaukee last year. They never should have beaten the Celtics. But they did. They were better in the bigger moments. They found a way. Tristan Thompson was also suspended in the NBA for using PEDs, which is funny because he's averaging 3 points a game, which, I'm not a genius, but if I'm taking steroids, I'd like to average more than 3 points a game. That's 3 more than you and me, right? Only 3 more. So that's not great to get suspended 25 games and then only improve your scoring average by 3 points. Limited minutes with the Cleveland Cavaliers. So Tristan Thompson's done for a while. Tonight you got Nuggets, Pacers on tap. Knicks in Brooklyn. Lakers, Clippers without LeBron James. Clippers have the best record in the NBA since late November. They currently sit fourth in the West, 2 games back of the Nuggets, Thunder, and Timberwolves. The Suns have also started to win a lot of games recently. You have the Pelicans, Sacramento, Dallas, Golden State, Houston outside looking in at this point with 18 and 20 wins. But no LeBron tonight. Important stretch for the Lakers. At the Clippers, home to the Bulls, at the Warriors, primetime Saturday. At the Rockets Monday. At Hawks. They play the Celtics next week. At the Knicks. Play the Nuggets. And then the All-Star break. But they want to make moves. Reportedly, they want to try to pull off a big trade with Atlanta for DeJounte Murray or potentially Trae Young, which would be interesting. I don't know how he'd fit with LeBron James. But to me, Atlanta is in full sell mode. Hasn't gone well. I'm not surprised. They sit 10th in the East, which is half game up on Brooklyn for the final wildcard spot, for the final play-in spot. I don't want to be in that. So that's no man's land. Where the Hawks live, the Chicago Bulls live. That's just kind of a painful existence. Where you're not that good of a team, but you're better than the other scum teams. You'll make the playoffs, miss out on draft picks. Doesn't sound like a great season for NBA draft picks, but again, for Atlanta, where are you going? What's your team going to look like? What kind of team are you trying to build? What kind of players do you want? It's all really uncertain at this point. What we do know is that Adrian Griffin's gone to Milwaukee. Terry Rozier is a member of the Miami Heat. And the NBA will heat up soon with the trade deadline in less than a couple weeks. Let's pivot to the NFL. We have a head coach hiring. The Tennessee Titans fired Mike Vrabel in a surprising move. Since then, they've interviewed a lot of people, talking to candidates, going through different things. And here we sit with the Tennessee Titans hiring Brian Callahan as the team's next head coach. Brian Callahan was the former offensive coordinator with the Cincinnati Bengals. He helped Joe Burrow get his start coming from LSU. They've worked together, put together great offenses. And he was one of the more underrated, under the radar guys. But he's leaving the Bengals, joining the Titans, while he'll have to try to work his magic with Will Levis next season. From all accounts, he's a very smart football mind. He's worked with a great quarterback in Cincinnati. I think Zach Taylor's a good head coach in Cincinnati as well. So he's experienced, he's decorated, he knows what he's doing when it comes to calling offensive plays. No doubt about it. Here's my question. Is Brian Callahan a better head coach than Mike Vrabel? And it's hard for me to say he's going to be. Mike Vrabel took a team that wasn't very talented and got them to an AFC championship game with Ryan Tannehill as his quarterback, beating Tom Brady and the Patriots along the way, I might add. Beating Lamar Jackson and the Ravens along the way before losing to Kansas City. Winning division titles, getting a number 1 seed, Derrick Henry's great seasons, the defenses that they had in Tennessee. It sounded like they fired Vrabel because the GM and Vrabel could not get along. Vrabel wanted a say on player personnel. The GM did not want to do that, and the owner had to make a choice, and he said, we're going to move off of Mike Vrabel. I would have kept Mike Vrabel if I knew I could only get Brian Callahan. I talked about this last week, how you're going to hear everything's a great hire. What a smart guy, what a great hire. And it's all, Adrian Griffin was a great hire, and he was fired in 6 months. I can't tell you Brian Callahan's going to be a great head coach, that he is a great hire. When I juxtapose it, I don't think it's a great hire over keeping Mike Vrabel. Not every head coach should have a say in player personnel. I am with that. However, if you're a head coach that builds on culture, that builds on toughness, I think you know what type of guys that you'd like. I think you'd like to sit in on interviews, meetings, and go, what kind of players are we looking for? That guy's not going to fit. He's not tough, and he's not this. I think Dan Campbell could suss that out in Detroit. Why are they having so much success? He knows the type of players that will gel with him. He knows what type of players can deal with him on a daily basis. I think Mike Vrabel's similar, where if you're not going to play the stuff, you're not going to play hard day in, day out, practice hard, you're not going to be there long. You're going to get cut. You're going to be unemployed. You'll be playing for another team because you can't deal with Mike Vrabel in the way he does his business. And I'm not saying Brian Callahan's going to be a pushover, but compared to Mike Vrabel, I think he will be. He had success with Cincinnati, but the success of coordinators can be very misleading because you have a great head coach with the coordinator, it doesn't work. Look at Belichick. Sean McDermott's been a good head coach with the Bills, but he has not been successful. He's never gotten to an AFC championship game. They haven't won more than one playoff game in a season during his entire tenure. Think about that. And he's labeled as one of the more successful coaches. Mike McDaniel, great head coach of the Dolphins. He's won 0 playoff games in his 2 seasons as bench boss. So you're coming on to a tough job, not to mention you got to deal with C.J. Stroud in that division. Jacksonville reloading, hiring new coordinators, trying to build a better team. So looking at it, I think Callahan he's probably a very good offensive coordinator, no doubt about it. But I think Vrabel is the better coach. And he might be a little more pushy. He might be a little more demanding. I think he's pretty damn good at his job. And that can be part of it. So with Tennessee coming off the board, that leaves the Atlanta Falcons, the Seattle Seahawks, the Los Angeles Chargers, the Carolina Panthers, who are really quiet, and the Washington football team. You had the Raiders, who kept Antonio Pierce. You have the Titans, who hired Brian Callahan. And you had the Patriots, who retained Gerard Mayo, who was a linebackers coach on the previous administration. Falcons have interviewed Bill Belichick twice, and they've continued to interview people. Bill Belichick has not been contacted by another team as of yet. Interesting one for me is the Chargers. Report today by Pro Football Talk. Pete Carroll has thrown himself into the Chargers head coaching discussion. He wants the job. He coached at USC, won multiple national championships. So you have Vrabel, who's in the mix, who'd like that job. You have Jim Harbaugh, who is in the mix and we think wants that job, unless he's just using it as leverage to get bigger money in Michigan. And Pete Carroll, all vying for the Chargers job, which I do think is the best job because you have the quarterback. And Mike Garofalo of NFL Network reported that the Chargers and Jim Harbaugh reportedly are in striking distance, air quotes, for a deal. I don't know what the hell that means, but apparently they're close. When the Chargers job drops, what happens? Because the Falcons have talked to Jim Harbaugh twice. They talked to Bill Belichick twice. They talked to other guys. Ben Johnson's doing interviews with a bunch of teams this week. He wants to take a job. Washington needs to hire a coach. Brian Callahan kind of a left field? It's another left field hire. Does Leslie Frazier, who was out of football last year, former defensive coordinator with the Bills, does he get a job? Does he get the opportunity to be a head coach again? I do believe Jim Harbaugh is going to be a head coach in the NFL again. I do think it's going to happen this year, and I think it's going to be with the Chargers. I'm going to say by the next time we speak, the next time that there's a podcast, Jim Harbaugh is going to be announced as the head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers. Because it makes too much sense. The fit works. It will not be crazy media attention, because that's not what Jim Harbaugh wants. I know that can be kind of labeled that way. I don't agree with that. I just think he wants to coach. Yes, he does things unorthodox. Yes, he cheated with the Michigan Wolverines this year, you could say, but it's over. But outside of that, I have no idea who Seattle's going to hire, because they've been quiet. Dan Quinn, to me, still seems like the likely option, but I don't know. Panthers, another team. I'm wondering, is it so quiet with the Panthers because nobody wants the job? Is that what's happening here? Nobody wants it. Because I wouldn't really want that job. The owner's crazy. A young quarterback who bad skill position players. No draft pick this year. No wide receiver talent. Somebody's going to take it, but I don't think it's a great job, and you very well could be out in your ass quicker than any of these other positions. David Tepper's fired a head coach in the middle of a season the past 2 years. So he's not afraid to do it. Job security is not something that happens in Carolina very often. But Tennessee off the board, those 5 openings still there. Other news, Tommy Rees, former offensive coordinator at Alabama and Notre Dame, is leaving the Crimson Tide to join the Cleveland Browns staff, who fired basically every part of their offense. Tommy Rees leaves Alabama, becomes a tight ends coach in the NFL. Everybody left Alabama. Kalen DeBoer replaced Nick Saban. Maybe Kalen did not want to keep Tommy Rees. It's not his guy. He wants to hire his own staff. I don't know if Tommy Rees was not held in high regard in college football. But to go from an offensive coordinator with a program like Alabama to a tight ends coach in Cleveland just seems like such a downgrade for him. Just in the wrong place. I don't know. Everybody has their jobs figured out. He does get to promote himself, go to the NFL, but I don't know. Just a weird spot for me. I look at it and go, I don't know. Other news, Tom Telesco, former GM of the Chargers, who was fired in late November, has been hired as the new Las Vegas Raider general manager. Stays in the division. Now will be paired with Antonio Pierce as his head coach. I don't really get it. I don't think Telesco built great teams in Los Angeles. They never made the playoffs. He drafted Justin Herbert. Since Justin Herbert's been in the league, they've won 0 playoff games. He found Austin Eckler. I'll give him that. Keenan Allen's been great. Re-signing Joey Bosa has been kind of a bust. I think he built a team that was good, not great. Talent adjacent. Never really addressing the tight end position. So, did he have some success with the Chargers? I suppose. But it's not as if they were winning Super Bowls, and this was an executive that's very much coveted. He was mediocre at best. He drafted Quentin Johnson in the first round this year. Quentin Johnson was an absolute wreck in his first season out of TCU. No production. Looking at other guys like Jordan Addison in Minnesota, you can't compare them. Zay Flowers is in the AFC Championship game. He's at over 1,000 yards receiving as a rookie. So the Raiders hired GM. I agree with keeping Antonio Pierce. But do I think Tom Telesco was the best fit, was the best choice to be the team's general manager? I don't. I don't think it was a smart hire. We'll see. But I think it's a little bit of a desperation thing. A little bit, okay, we need to hire somebody. Well, I wouldn't have hired him. 11 seasons as the GM. 84-95 record. 3 playoff appearances with 0 wins, by the way. They hired Josh McDaniels. He had a part in that. He had John Gruden. I don't know. So that's the Raiders. They had Anthony Lynn. Then you go. It was just weird head coaching hours. None of them worked out. They didn't have all that much success. Just hire Brandon Staley as a head coach. It's mixing up Raiders and Chargers. They play so close together, same division. They've been a similar franchise the last little while. No success, really. You're thinking the teams will be better. They're not. They have players on their team that you can see, Max Crosby with the Raiders, Herbert with the Chargers, and yet you kind of look up and go, okay. He's got Max Crosby. He's got Devontae Adams. He needs to get Devontae Adams a quarterback, whether that's through the draft or a veteran free agent. Jimmy Garoppolo, Aiden O'Connell are not going to be those dudes going into next season. I can guarantee you that. But we'll see where this offseason goes for the Raiders. The Eagles have made big changes, but it was not Nick Sirianni. They fired Matt Patricia, obviously. They fired defensive coordinator Sean Desai. And they fired offensive coordinator Brian Johnson today. Funny enough, Brian Johnson's interviewing for head coaching jobs. I don't think he's going to get one. But you had Shane Steichen, who was the offensive coordinator. He goes and takes the Colts job. Brian Johnson comes in. But the offense regressed. They were dominant last year, over 7.2 yards per play. And it went down. They didn't have the success. They didn't have a game plan. Jalen Hurts did not look set in the pocket. He said he did not enjoy running the offense this year. They didn't maximize his talents. So, with all that being said, I think you look around and go, okay, I'm done with this. It's not going to work. We need new offense. We need a new defense coordinator. Nick Sirianni clearly said, I'm going to have to let my friends go so I can keep this job. And that was the decision that he made. He will remain on as head coach. It sounds like they're going to have the year-end press conference tomorrow with him and Howie Roseman, the GM. He's been a great head coach in 3 seasons with the Eagles. But they had a bad year. They made mistakes. And the new choices for coordinators were not the best choices. But we'll see. This is interesting. Big changes, but you don't change out the head coach. Here's news. Shams Charania of The Athletic. Doc Rivers is the leader to become new head coach of the Bucks, and the sides are working towards a deal, league sources say. So it does sound like Doc Rivers is going to get back in the coaching game. We'll have another opportunity. But that's the NFL kind of news and notes. Nothing with Harbaugh yet, nothing definitive. No Belichick rumors. We got two championship games this coming Sunday. There's been a lot of firings of this coordinators this offseason, a lot of moves. Cleveland deciding to fire everybody was a choice, was a decision. So it opens up opportunities for other guys. Raiders hiring a new GM. The Washington football team hiring a new GM. The Carolina Panthers hiring a new GM. So Carolina, Washington, both just hired new GMs, are now starting to look for their next head coach. Washington's also brought in 2 aides to help them find a head coach, their future head coach. So still lots to be decided. Championship games this weekend. We'll talk about the games more in depth as the week goes on. But with that being said, let's pivot. to the NHL. Corey Perry is a member of the Edmonton Oilers. Obviously had a rough go with the Chicago Blackhawks, was released from the team. There was an incident that not everybody knows about. We don't know the details. We don't know what happened. But Corey Perry was let go. He then entered treatment, which he did. He said he skated 5 days a week after getting the help. Been waiting for an opportunity, and the Edmonton Oilers gave him a call. Edmonton's won 13 games in a row. They were rated yesterday as the number one team in the NHL power rankings, which is stupid, by the way, but hey, it's their rankings, but it's stupid. They're not the number one team in the league. But I've said this before. Corey Perry was playing in the league again this year, no doubt about it. One incident does not define your life, does not define your career. And if you're of the opinion that one incident, unless it's a heinous act, defines your life, defines your career, defines you as a person, then I think you have a really short-minded way of looking at life. People are given second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth chances all the time. Eventually, you shouldn't give them that chances, but Corey Perry's made one mistake. He's a Stanley Cup champion. He's a Hart Trophy winner. He's been to Stanley Cup final after Stanley Cup final. I think he had options. Tampa reportedly wanted him. Colorado checked in. But he decides to go to Edmonton, where he fills a need on their bottom six. Adam Ernie gets waived. Corey Perry will join the team. He's better than Sam Gagner. He's better than Derek Ryan, some of these guys. He knows what he's doing. He knows his role. He's a pest. He's not afraid to mix it up. And they need a little snarl at the back of their lineup. You have McDavid. You have Draisaitl. You don't have a whole lot of cap room. So if you do want to improve your team at the trade deadline, this is a move that doesn't cost you anything. League minimum deal for Corey Perry with incentives. I think he's going to be a fit. I think he's going to play hard. I think this Edmonton Oilers team, slow start, but they're chugging along. They feel the pressure. They know they need to win a Stanley Cup. It's Cup or bust season for the Edmonton Oilers. They look at the Jets. They look at the Vancouver Canucks, who have been phenomenal stories, and think, we have to keep pace with them. We can pass Vegas in the standings. We've already passed the Los Angeles Kings. Maybe we can make it interesting on Vancouver down the stretch if everything goes right. But I think Corey Perry, I think the Maple Leafs should have called Corey Perry. I mentioned I thought Colorado was going to be the team that eventually got him. But the dude's a winner. He's one of the better superstars turned into a role players in the history of the league. He knows he's a fourth liner. He knows what he's going to do. He kills penalties, pisses people off, and he embraces it. He might have had an alcohol issue this year. He could have been an alcoholic and something happened inside that dressing room. We don't know, but that's what I'm pontificating. He went and got help. He'll be 39 in May. He's not going to play forever. But what he does have is 1,273 games of experience, 4 Stanley Cup finals, and he's played in almost 200 playoff games over the course of his career with 124 points. He's just a gamer. He's not going to have to be a star. You have McDavid, you have Draisaitl, Nugent Hopkins, Bouchard, Stu Skinner. But he brings something different to that roster, something they don't have, something they needed. It cost you nothing. There's no loss here. It's a win for the Edmonton Oilers. It's also a win that other teams don't have them and you do. Looking at Edmonton's roster, the bottom of the lineup, Phil Kemp, Dylan Holloway, Connor Brown, no goals in 35 games, Janmark, Derek Ryan, Sam Gagner. I like Corey Perry over all those guys, and it's not close. I think he'll be fine. I don't think there'll be another incident. I think the Edmonton Oilers are a good team. They need to continue to play well to be a great team, to be consistently great. They've won 13 in a row, which is impressive. And I've talked about their next stretch, which is pretty easy. They got Columbus tonight. Then they play the Blackhawks. Home to the Predators Saturday afternoon, which could be Corey Perry's debut, they're saying, which would be their last game before they go on the All-Star break where they have their bye week. But I love the signing for the Oilers. Other teams will regret not doing it. Kudos to Ken Holland. Patrick Waugh to the Islanders. A Saturday night Lou Lamoriello stunner. It's almost 8 p.m. I'm watching football with my parents, getting ready to flip between that and the Leaf game because they can't miss that. And Patrick, I see it comes on my phone, Patrick Waugh fired. Patrick Waugh hired by the Islanders. Lane Lambert relieved of his duties, or as we say here on the podcast, you're fired. Relieving of duties. Patrick Waugh left the Colorado Avalanche high and dry when they said they wanted to rebuild and reload and retool. He quit before the season started because he didn't want to do it. They hired Jared Bednar. They then went on to have one of the worst seasons, in league history. They overcame it. Still had McKinnon, Rantanen. You had a guy by the name of Cale Makar. And a few seasons later, Jared Bednar's winning Coach of the Year and the Colorado Avalanche win the Stanley Cup. Bednar is still coaching the Avs. To me, he's one of the best coaches in the league. It helps that he's, on one of the best teams. But the dude's been phenomenal. Patrick Waugh handled that the wrong way, but he went back to Quebec, had some successful seasons, and his last season as a QMJHL coach last year, he won the Memorial Cup. Still looks scary, still looks angry behind the bench, but I will say with Lou Lamoriello's 1880s policy of needing to be clean-shaven and no personality and have a haircut that everybody else has, he looks younger. Doesn't look as intimidating. But I saw videos of his first practice. He's bringing it. Lou's in his 80s. He's been at this a long time. This is likely going to be the last team that he works for, the New York Islanders. They got to back-to-back conference championship games with Barry Trotz. And since then, the team's been mediocre. Losing in the first round to Carolina last year. They're now looking at it going, can we be a playoff team this year? Well, they won the opener. The Islanders did. They're currently 2 points out of the final wild card spot. They're 4 points back of the Hurricanes and the Flyers in the Metropolitan Division. For Patrick Waugh, he does have one of the best goalies in the league in Ilya Sorokin. He is one of the best defensemen in the league in Noah Dobson. Matt Barzal's actually had a pretty good season, which often he just is an overrated player, but he's been very good this year. Horvat's been solid Anders Lee's been disappointed. He's fallen off a cliff. Pajot's given them nothing. You're looking at this roster going, you have about 5 guys producing and the rest don't. You need to find a way to build some offense, build some consistent play out of the majority of your lineup. That's what Patrick Waugh is going to have to do. Because Anders Lee having 13 goals after 46 games, but only having 19 points, just ain't cutting it. Dobson plays 26 minutes a game. He's doing everything that he can. And for all the old heads, he's plus 19. Sorokin's played a ton. Barzal plays a ton. I think this team is fast. They're faster than you think. They need to be opened up a little bit. Let them play outside the structure. Not so methodical. Not so play the trap. That's not the team that they have. They can be faster. They can attack on the rush. See what happens. I think Patrick Waugh is going to do a bit of that. See that you have some skill on this team. Try to find more from guys like Pajot, Anders Lee, Simon Holmstrom. But this is clearly a move. You want to make the playoffs. Like Adrian Griffin, you didn't think Lane Lambert's going to get you there. You needed a boost. You needed something, a jolt to get you there. And Patrick Waugh must like the job because I think he was going to be at least considered for the Ottawa gig. But that might very well be going to Craig Berube at the end of the year. If Toronto fails, do I think they would have given him a call? Maybe. They might not have hired him because he's a Montreal Canadian and all that stuff, but I would have given him a call when they don't win the Cup, inevitably. There will be firings. I mean, there's been so many firings this year, but is Minnesota going to keep, John Hines? I don't know. What happens in St. Louis? They're going to need a new head coach. Does he like that job? There would be some available where I think he would have some interest. But he knows Lou Lamoriello. He can have control of the team, the authority, in a Metropolitan Division that is very winnable and just be competitive there. Wins his opener against the Stars on Sunday. They now await Vegas at home tonight. Vegas off a back-to-back where they played dreadful last night against the Devils. Tyler Toffoli ended up winning the game in overtime with his hat-trick goal. But the Islanders have become more interesting. I'm going to watch that game tonight. And it's fun to have Patrick Waugh back behind a bench in the NHL. Canucks news, Jim Rutherford signed to a big extension, 3-year deal. He won Stanley Cup in Carolina. He won 2 in Pittsburgh. And through almost 50 games, he's built the best team in the NHL with the Vancouver Canucks. At their peak, do I think Colorado can be better than Vancouver? Sure. But if I'm just looking at the seasons, Vancouver has 32 wins, which is the most in the NHL. You look at what some of their players have done. JT Miller is on pace for a career year. So is Elias Pettersson. Quinn Hughes, Philip Hronek, Brock Besser, point per game after 47 games with 27 goals. They seem to win every night. They have a style that can win every night. Seeing guys like Dakota Joshua get better. Niels Hoglander, Connor Garland, who I thought was awesome Saturday night against the Leafs. They've just built a good team. They improved their defense in the offseason via free agency. They've hardly got anything out of Carson Soucy because he's been injured all year. But Tyler Myers has stepped up to his credit. I did not see that coming. You get efforts from guys like Ian Cole, Zadorov's been a good ad. Myers. You go through this team. Their best players are fantastic, no doubt about it. Thatcher Demko's been phenomenal in between the pipes, but also their depth plays the way that they're supposed to, that Rick Tocchet wants them to play. They play the style that he wants them to play at as a coach, and it works. And Jim Rutherford chose the right head coach, hired Patrick Alvin as the GM. That's worked out, and they're keeping him around. He left Pittsburgh because they wanted to go in a different direction than he wanted to go. And since he left Pittsburgh, they've really been a flat-out disaster. They gave up an own goal last night. They gave up a 2-0 lead in the third period to Vegas on Saturday. And currently they're on the outside of the playoffs looking in. They're in the 6 wild card spot in the Eastern Conference. 48 points in 44 games. Sid Crosby's in great, but it doesn't really matter. They're behind Washington this standing, behind the Islanders, behind the Devils. Kyle Dubas just looking for answers in Pittsburgh. Well, Jim Rutherford has a team that potentially could contend for a cup this year in Vancouver. Now I'll add this. I think if the Vancouver Canucks win a round this year, it is a successful season because I did not expect this out of them. I did not expect them to be this good. If they could go on a deep run, they could get to a conference final. I'm not saying they can't, but winning a round based on where they were is absolutely a success for this team. Having to deal with the Edmontons of the world, the Vegas Golden Knights of the world. Getting the number 1 seed could be pivotal. Then you get a team potentially like Los Angeles in the first round out west. Because I look at out west, Winnipeg's making the playoffs. Colorado's going to make the playoffs. I believe Dallas is going to make the playoffs. Vancouver is. I have trust in Vegas. I have trust in Edmonton. LA's had their problems. They lost in the gimmick to San Jose last night, who stink beyond stink. But I still believe that Los Angeles is too good to get in. To not get in, pardon me. That leaves Nashville is in that spot right now, but you have the Coyotes who have 2 games in the end. You have Calgary who's still lurking. Seattle lurking. St. Louis, Minnesota. One of those teams is going to make the playoffs. I don't think any of them are that good. The number 1 seed in the West will get one of those teams. If I'm Vancouver, I want it. Give me that team in the first round. You're at least going to win a round and say, you know what? Maybe Vegas and Edmonton play and they beat the hell out of one another and Edmonton's got nothing left and we go scoop the bones of them and then we meet up with whoever in the Central. We'll play the Avalanche and we'll say, hey, Pat Benatar, hit me with your best shot. That's my plan of attack. That's what I want to happen. Because I do not care if I play the Preds, the Coyotes, the Flames, any of those teams, give me them. They're all the same. They all make mistakes. They all have goaltending that you don't trust. They're never there. I mean, Flames play the Blues tonight. 2 teams that probably should be tanking, that should be moving in a different direction, but they're still, we're still kind of in it, and we don't want to tell our fan base that we're not good enough. And now Jacob Markstrom's back for the Flames. Flames could easily be that final playoff team. Because on paper, they're better than the Coyotes. They're better than the Predators. But they also look at them and go, Elias Lindholm's going to be a free agent. Hannafin's going to be a free agent. What the hell are we doing here? Are we losing these guys for nothing? No way in hell. But Rutherford has earned that extension. He's built a great team. Kudos to him. Also, kudos to the Boston Bruins. For the first time in 34 games, the Winnipeg Jets allowed more than 3 goals last night. To the Boston Bruins. a team I had my doubts about going into this season. You lose Patrice, you lose Krejci. One would think you'd struggle. But after 46 games, the Boston Bruins have only lost 8 times in regulation. They have 67 points in 46 games. David Pastrnak is in the league MVP discussion. If he's not, throw away the award. Brad Marchand still playing at a point-per-game pace. Charlie Coyle has been phenomenal, if you ask me, offensively and defensively, just his plays with the puck. McAvoy, outside of his suspension, has been great. Van Riemsdyk, I think, has been very good. DeBrus has been okay. Frederick has taken a big step, in my opinion. I like his game. We look around. Peyton Wotherspoon, Jesper Boquist, Derek Forbert, Jakob Lacko, Matt Grzelcyk, Brandon Carlo, love him. Shattenkirk, gone Messier 100 years ago. Matthew Poitras, a rookie. Lindholm, down season. Danton Heinen. They are playing a style, relying on that top line to be great, which they are, banking on their goaltending being consistently very good, which it is, and they are in this position. Over halfway through the season. First place in the Atlantic Division by 7 points over the Florida Panthers. They have 13 more points than the Toronto Maple Leafs, which is stunning at this point of the season. Stunning. The way they defend and play for one another, that's why they're winning. They care about both ends of the ice. David Pastrnak's playing a game that's different than he was in the past. He's not cheating anymore. He's making less selfish decisions. He's always going to be a great scorer. He's always going to be an underrated passer. But he's playing like a guy that knows he needs to be a leader. Play like he's meant to be that guy in Boston. And he is. And what I think this does is the season you look at it and go, our team's great. We can beat anybody. We've beaten the Leafs twice. We've beaten Winnipeg. We've beaten the Rangers. Beaten Florida on the road. What do we do at the deadline? Don Sweeney will have to look up and go, I spent a lot last year and it burned me. We lost in the first round. I don't see Florida dipping down to a wild card team this year. I just think they're too talented. Playing Detroit, possibly playing Tampa, Washington. Devils would be tricky. I wouldn't want to play the Devils if they can get in, because if they can get healthy, look out. But this is sort of similar to Vancouver, where I thought Boston would be a playoff team potentially. If everything went right and they didn't get injuries and their goalies are, But now they got to think, do we trade for Elias Lindholm with Calgary? Do we do that? Can we get 2 forwards by the time the trade deadline's over? One more of a brand name guy in Lindholm and maybe another player on our team that can help us. Can we do that? Can we pull that off? Because for the most part, I like their defense. It's the same defense that they had. And it was good. Same goaltending. Could you get a center of substance? It's not going to be Scheifele. Could be Lindholm. I don't see them making a bigger trade because they don't have the assets. You don't want to put the cap number. And trade away, Fabian Lysell, who's a point-per-game player in the American League this year, who I know they're high on, who could get a look at the NHL level by the time the year's over, which I don't think is a bad idea. But just food for thought. Because it's beyond impressive what this team's put together, how they continue to do it, continue to be in this position. Kudos to the Boston Bruins. Tonight in the NHL, Sens in Montreal, Dallas in Detroit, Tampa in Philadelphia. Recently, this is just tonight, Carter Hart's been granted a leave of absence from the Philadelphia Flyers due to a personal matter. No word of its mental health or anything. Dylan Dubé left the Calgary Flames on Sunday because he's got to deal with his mental health. But no Carter Hart for Philly. That's a huge loss. They've lost a couple in a row. They've been a great team all season long, but they don't have him. That could be the hole in the boat that Keith Jones wants, because he does not want this team to be a playoff team. He wants to blow it up. Vegas in Long Island. Washington and Minnesota. You have St. Louis in Calgary with Jacob Markstrom returning Columbus, visiting the Edmonton Oilers. Buffalo at the Anaheim Ducks. Olin Zellweger will make his NHL debut tonight for the Anaheim Ducks. Reason to watch for myself. New York in San Jose. So, decent little lineup of NHL games tonight as we gear up towards the NHL All-Star break, the All-Star game in Toronto. Who can't wait for that? Bore. But interesting nonetheless. Things happening in the league for sure. Players gone. Yeah, just reading here. Granted indefinite leave of absence. Interesting. Also, the Devils extended their GM, Tom Fitzgerald. He also was promoted to president of hockey operations. So he gets a promotion. Been working in New Jersey for a long time. Has built a damn good team. They've had so many injuries this year. No Dougie Hamilton, no Jack Hughes. Seems every time they get healthy, they lose somebody, which is too bad. But we'll see. Also, it looks like Mark Giordano is going to be a healthy scratch for the second straight game tomorrow for the Maple Leafs. And Ilya Samsonov will get the start against the Winnipeg Jets. So back-to-back starts for him for the first time in over a month. So interesting development there as they begin a home-and-home with the Winnipeg Jets. Let's move to tennis before we wrap today. Interesting Australian Open. Novak Djokovic is into his 11th Australian Open semifinal. He dispatched Taylor Fritz this morning, the American, in 4 sets. Fritz has never beaten Djokovic head-to-head. He's now 0-9 against him. Djokovic will be playing an interesting opponent, Jannik Sinner, who's never beaten Djokovic at a major, who's young, very good. The Italian beat Andrei Rublev, a tough opponent, in straight sets. That should be a phenomenal semifinal. They played each other a lot. Can this be the tournament where we see Sinner break through? We'll have to wait and see for that. The other men's draw tonight, you get Carlos Alcaraz playing Sasha Zverev. Zverev actually has a winning head-to-head record, so he'll look to pull off an upset after winning in 5 sets against Cameron Norrie on Monday. In the other semifinal, you have Hubert Hurkacz against Daniil Medvedev. 2 big servers. Medvedev made the U.S. Open final, losing to Djokovic. He beat Alcaraz in the semifinal to get there, so he could potentially be setting up for a rematch of the U.S. Open semifinals if Medvedev and Alcaraz both win tonight, which I believe they will. For the women's draw, Coco Gauff had a tough match against Kostyuk from Ukraine, but she fought off break points, She was down 5-2 in the first set, came back to win that set in a tiebreak. She advances. She has not lost a match in 2024. She won her first tournament of the year. She's now in the semifinal here. First semifinal at the Australian Open. She will play last year's champion, Arina Sabalenka, in the semifinal. These two women met in the semifinal. Met in the final of the US Open. So a rematch of that. Coco Gauff obviously winning that affair in straight sets. Sabalenka has not dropped a set in the tournament. She has not had a match go over an hour and 15 minutes. She has been locked in. She has been surgical down under. No Swiatek. These two are the highest seeds remaining. Both Grand Slam champions last year. You had Coco Gauff winning a tournament prior to this. You had Sabalenka reach the final in Brisbane where she lost to Alina Rybakina. Coco Gauff could get to number 2-3 in the world if she wins the Australian Open here. Sabalenka is just trying to keep her points because she won the major last year. I think it's phenomenal, the match. I think both women are playing their best tennis. They're some of the best in the world. That match will be Thursday morning at a time we don't know yet, but it should be good. The other side of the women's draw, 3 unseeded women who have never been in a quarterfinal, and a woman who's ranked but has never been to a quarterfinal either. You have Noskova of the Czech Republic, who beat Iga Swiatek and then beat Svitolina via a walkover in the 4th round. She will meet Yastremska tonight, who's from Ukraine. Both women. Noskova's 20 years old. Yastremska's first quarterfinal. What an opportunity for these two women. The second women's semifinal, Kalinskaya from Russia meets Zhang tonight from China. Zhang, 12th in the world, has done very well outside of majors, going on deep runs. It's the farthest she's been at a major. The 3rd highest seed remaining. She's a big favorite to reach a Grand Slam final based on just her accolades, her accomplishments so far in her career. But what an opportunity for her. But tonight you get Noskova Yastremska at 9. And then goes to Hurkacz Medvedev. Tomorrow morning, Zhang Kalinskaya at 4:15 a.m. And then following that, Zverev and Alcaraz at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. Fun night / morning of tennis. Few days left of the Australian Open, the first major of the season. This is where the going gets tough. Can anybody get by Novak Djokovic? Can anybody beat him? We'll have to wait and see. A lot of sports tackle tonight. I love it. There should be head coaching news soon, you'd think. We got interesting storylines in the NHL. Could be announcements from the UFC anytime on UFC 300 and other events. So we'll update you all on that when I get the news. Until then, take care. Enjoy the sports tonight. And this is To The Point.